Hello and welcome again to Penthesilea On Air podcast. After our small summer break, we will again explore the intersection of mind, body, and artistry. Today's guest is Giuliano Sommerhalder, a trumpeter whose career reflects both tradition and innovation. After early success at major international competitions, he went on to serve as a principal trumpet at the Leipzig Gewandhaus Orchestra, the Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra in Amsterdam, the Rotterdam Philharmonic, and now at the Orchestre de la Suisse Romande in Geneva. Alongside his orchestral career, he has appeared internationally as a soloist and chamber musician, co-founded the ensemble Italian Wonderbrass, and is a dedicated teacher at the Bern University of the Arts, the Accademia Internazionale di Musica e Arte in Rome, and holds a position for Baroque trumpet at the Haute École de Musique Geneva. He also co-leads the Girolamo Fantini International Trumpet Competition in Italy. And today, we'll explore Giuliano's experiences across orchestral life in general, how to stay free and inspired when recording in the studio, the role of competitions, and so much more. Like most of you, I'm so excited for this conversation. And by the end, we will also discuss all the questions by our Penthesilea community. So stay with us until the end. A very warm welcome to all those classical musicians out there who want to grow and expand a creative lifestyle both on and off stage. My name is Karin Bonelli. I'm flutist at the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra, a passionate explorer and seeker in musical and personal growth, and founder of Penthesilea Academy, the most innovative masterclass designed for audition preparation. This podcast is for you if you're searching for new ideas to elevate the productivity of your musical practice and your level of focus and expression on stage. But that's not all. In each episode, you will find bits and pieces to integrate into your everyday life, as well as new perspectives and insights by our experienced and passionate team and guests. Music is not a job. It is a way of living. My name is Karin Bonelli, and this is Penthesilea On Air. Welcome, Giuliano, and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure, and congratulations for the project. I really like it a lot. Very happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Our community was so much looking forward to this interview. So we have many questions by the end of this conversation, which are by our community members. So we'll dive right in. Your CV shows like a long list of orchestras. Was playing in an orchestra your original dream, or did you also dream of becoming a soloist from the start?
So, of course, I grew up practicing the solo repertoire primarily from when I was about 10. And I did start performing as a soloist very early just because opportunities came up. Also, thanks to, for example, my grandfather on my mother's side, who was a fantastic organ player and had an amateur choir of 100 people. And they were doing a yearly concert in the Tonhalle in Zurich. So he was renting the Tonhalle and buying an orchestra and trying to, break even by selling the tickets and filling the hall, which he would regularly succeed. And he had me, for example, he allowed me to play the Haydn trumpet concerto when I was 12 and a B minor mass just a couple years later. And so I got plenty of opportunities such as that quite early on, also with amateur orchestras and little local orchestras. But I got used to the feeling quite early. And yeah, then it just continued, and therefore, let's say playing alone was not really such an issue for me, especially as long as I was in the pre-adult, unconscious age, because I didn't know it was scary yet. Know some things are difficult yet. You just do them, and the brain turns on slightly later, and that's where it gets interesting.
Do
So
you
I
remember
loved.
that point, like when you started to think about things really consciously?
Yes, definitely. That's happened a little bit later. So, of course, we listen to a lot of music at home, and maybe we'll get back on that later. But the only thing I didn't like about being a soloist was kind of the loneliness, because you're always on your own. You go to hotels, you have a great life if you see it from outside, but you're basically quite lonely unless you go have a dinner with the conductor or with some people you know in the orchestras.
Yeah.
But I definitely wanted to be part of a community. I wanted to be part of a team, and I loved great symphonic repertoire. I will listen to Mahler, to Stravinsky, to Bruckner, to everything and much more. And I was dreaming of playing those things, and we were living in the countryside, so I could turn up the stereo to the max and just play on top of the recordings, which I loved. I still love to do. I put any record on. It was still a record, so I would put a Mahler 7 and practice the part, and go back if I something went wrong, and just play on top of the orchestra along with the stereo. And that made me, of course, dream I could be part of such an orchestra for real. And I recognized soon enough that uh, standing there and doing an orchestral audition wasn't too scary for me in that period, because that's what I was already doing. What I didn't recognize is that that's not the actual job I was going to go for, because
Mhm.
audition and orchestral playing, as you know, are two different sets of skills. And if you're not prepared for that, the actual orchestral job can be overwhelming sometimes, because you just don't have some of the tools you need, and which are really completely, it's like having to play a tennis match to enter a soccer team.
Mm, absolutely. So, what would you say were those tools? Like, I imagine you learned a lot in the first years. What What was the difficulty, trumpet wise, to blend into the orchestra? I mean, you were in so many different orchestras. Did you have to adapt to every different orchestra, or did it just come naturally? How did that go?
Well, so first of all, I think one of the things which were most difficult for me in the orchestra is that I was used to playing short amounts of time, very difficult technical things in terms of virtuosity, but I had the opportunity to warm up until shortly before, go on stage, play for 15, 20, 25 minutes, and go away again. And the orchestra is a stop and go. You are very often cold, your muscles are not warmed up, your technique is completely different if you want to play on cold lips rather than on warm lips. And this was the thing I was least prepared for. So playing delicate things after half an hour sitting around in the opera pit was the most distant thing from what I was.
Mm,
So that was also the biggest challenge. Big solos, Mahler 5, Petrushka, and you name it, was less of an issue, because I was kind of already used to that kind of thing. And for your second question about blending in and adapting to the different styles and ways of playing in the orchestra, I don't have the feeling that this was very difficult for me, because what we were most busy with at home was talking about style, speaking about taste. My father is a trumpet player, but he used to be a biologist before he studied trumpet, and then he
wow.
took
Okay.
a side leap, and because his real passion was music, and I'm very happy he followed his passion and not what his parents wanted him to do. And my mom is a very gifted violin player from a sixth generation musicians dynasty. So uh, at home, all we were talking about was music and commenting recordings, and criticizing, also constructively, not always, but sometimes,
Wow.
different styles and ways of playing the Baroque. They are both very fond of Baroque historical interpretation. They both played under Nicolas Arnoncourt in Lucerne in the festival orchestra when they were young. So they had this current, and they were very much into this new way of approaching historic performance. And therefore, discussing different ways of playing was daily bread.
Mm,
And we often would also, just as a joke, play wrong with the wrong style, just to make fun of people who use vibrato in big romantic vibrato in Bach, or for people who turn around the long short articulations and so on. If you play tenuto with no little phrasing and 70s style for the Baroque playing. So talking style was daily bread. And I think therefore I became very naturally adaptive. And of course, if you join a new orchestra, you look on what material they play. You know that in the brass instruments we have basically two systems, which are called German and American, but that's a little bit wrong. It's basically a piston valve versus rotary valve systems. Trombones only use rotary valve systems. They no longer use piston trombones, but tuba, trumpet, and even horn used to be, both systems used to be available. So, of course, when I started in Leipzig, it was clear that it was almost 100% pure rotary system. And I had already played that, so I was okay with that. And then when I went to Amsterdam, it was almost 100% pure piston, but more and more they also started introducing the rotary system. And in the other orchestra was where I've been, especially Rotterdam and now Geneva, it's hybrid. It's literally we play both systems, and we try to evaluate the pros and cons of each system depending on repertoire.
Wow. So there's a lot of flexibility needed from trumpet players, of course, but from everybody in the orchestra. I'm very interested into this aspect, as you mentioned, that the challenge was to like start cold in the orchestra because you're sitting so long. And this is not something that happens to trumpet players. Obviously, we on the piccolo have the same problem. Sometimes we sit like for 3 movements and then we have this crazy 2-line solo.
Yes.
So I'm interested, is there like a technical tool you have for that? Or is it only like a mindset thing that you prepare mentally? Okay, now I have to like become aware again and wake up again. How do you do that?
Well, let me start with the fact that I had major fails and in very prestigious occasions. So
Thank you for sharing.
I can
That's
also
great.
say when I can also tell you where and when, but the royal example was a tour with Bruckner 4 in Japan, where I would miss the same thing in every single concert. So and I couldn't solve it on the go, so I just had to get through it. And my colleagues were very mad at me. And Ricardo Chailly gave me a 15-minute speech in his conductor's room while the others were waiting in the bus to go back to the hotel. So
Oh
that wasn't
no.
fun. That wasn't fun, but it made me understand that I had to fix it. And in that case, I must say, definitely there is also a little bit of material research to be done. You have material which sounds great when you're warm and your breathing system and your vibration is up and running, and you have some material which is not necessarily giving you the best sound, but it gives you a more guaranteed response, and in any situation. So definitely on material, you can on the brass instruments you can achieve quite a lot. I think in double reeds, for example, you would play with lighter reeds just to make sure the note starts and you get the notes out. And if it's not with the very best sound you have ever produced, it's less dramatic than if nothing comes out at all. So I mean, yeah, we would like to always have everything, but sometimes you have to set priorities. And yeah, that's where I slowly got aware that I had to accept that material also matters, and I cannot fix everything by practicing more. I would always blame myself. I grew up practicing and trying to fix things on one set of material, and I had to slowly become aware that I could indeed improve certain things by looking for material. I often see the opposite happen, and people who always blame the material and never themselves, and I don't think that's good either. And but yeah, to some extent, I think one needs to do that, and you can get lost because you can quickly get lost in the forest of a million options out there on the market, hoping you find something that gives you everything. So definitely, as you say, the technique, the mindset, being awake, being alert, preparing, maybe even half a page before, or just getting in the mood. matters a lot when you're in concert. But yes, material can help.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that also, because yeah, that's always good to hear. Also for our students, the way how we learn things is not always through success, but
No, you learn from
sometimes you
failure
have
much
different.
more than from success.
Yeah, I agree absolutely. So yeah, and now you have all this experience in those different orchestras. Can you tell what you enjoy most in general playing in the orchestra, but also like in everyday life? Because you have it all. You have orchestra. You are a soloist. You're a chamber musician. You are a teacher. But let's dive into orchestra playing. What do you enjoy most of it?
Of course, the number one pro of being in an orchestra is the repertoire. You are embedded in fantastic inventions by amazing brains and by great composers. You are surrounded by a 3D immersive experience of being inside an artwork. And this is what made us dream of becoming musicians. So you are basically embedded in the material and in the reality, which gave you that dream of going and applying and trying to get in an orchestra. That's the number one plus. The number two plus is that in great professional orchestras, you're surrounded by incredible professionals. You're surrounded by great artists and it's instrumentalists who have all have a brilliant trajectory and who on a daily basis produce beauty, produce high level quality, which is nothing but admirable. And it's a constant masterclass in musicianship, is a constant masterclass in professionalism, in attitude. I mean, in every orchestras you have some people who are a bit tired of the job, who might be a bit frustrated, who might be a bit done with it, but you also have people who are extremely motivated and who are extremely enthusiastic about what they do, and from those you can learn on a daily basis. Number three is definitely you often get amazing soloists to listen to for free. So we play so many. If you play in the symphony orchestra, especially, but it also applies to the opera. When you have good singers on stage, you constantly have top quality soloists playing right in front of you or above you if you're in the orchestra pit. Um, and I think if you want to learn, you have so much to learn in an orchestra and get inspired by and just absorb ideas, and you get a bit richer with every rehearsal, literally. And then if in the best case, which is getting more and more rare, but if you have amazing conductors in front of you, you also get a free music lesson. If you have bad conductors, you get you get frustrated because you have more experience than the conductor, or sometimes you get frustrated because they don't know what you would be able to produce if you were put in the correct conditions, in the good conditions to give your best. Sometimes you are not, but this is about leadership and it takes another podcast for that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I
And the
also had the
negative things,
impression that. Sorry.
no worries.
I also have the impression that most of our students think that, well, when you get into the orchestra, then you have like you're done. You learned everything, and now you reach this big goal, and you just relax and lay back. But actually, you have more teachers when you get into the orchestra. As you said, from the soloists, from the conductors, it's actually the real study begins when you get into the orchestra. That's my point of view.
Well, if you
How do
decide
you
to
see that?
if you decide to stay humble and not get arrogant because you have a tenured job, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
From my perspective, the challenge gets bigger and bigger because first you're trying to win an audition where you already know that the odds are not amazing, but if you manage to win an audition, that's one first milestone. And then you have to pass the trial, which is a completely different pair of shoes. And in my opinion, is much more difficult than a single one day photography of you, because you have to prove to the orchestra that they've made the right decision, prove yourself as a colleague, prove yourself as a team player, as a leader if you're on a leading position. And once you've passed your trial, if that happens, you have to prove to the orchestra for the rest of your life that they've made the right decision. So, in my opinion, it doesn't get easier. Of course, what gets easier is that you have a little bit less pressure in terms of existential aspects of making a living out of music making. You have a tenure, that you have a salary in European orchestras. If the orchestra does well and nothing happens to the organization itself until your retirement potentially, so you can relax a little bit in terms of tension, and maybe try to sometimes experiment and improve things and try out things, and it gives you a little bit more freedom for that. You're not constantly in survival mode. That's for sure very good. But it doesn't get easier, because especially if you play an instrument which is very exposed, I think every concert is like a first time.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, do you go on stage with a different mindset if you're just playing the solo in the orchestra, or if you're playing an actual solo concerto?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Um, yes, definitely, I think so. Yes, the mindset for a solo concerto, once again, is just to try to express as much of your artistic idea about the piece in the time you have, which is very short, and your only responsibility is towards yourself. You're responsible for yourself. If you do something which is less good than you would have wished, the only person to suffer the consequences is you, because you will be slightly frustrated or disappointed, but nobody else will actually blame you. Worst thing that can happen is you don't get re-invited,
Yeah.
or you get a bad review, but yeah, that can happen anyway. But when you go on stage with an orchestra, first of all, you're embarking on a 2-hour journey for a symphony orchestra concert, and on a sometimes 5 or 6 hours even opera. And the focus it needs to play in a solid way over such a long time span is very different. And the responsibility you bear towards the group is probably the biggest thing to deal with, because what you do is just a little piece of a puzzle, and if the rest of the puzzle is fantastic and you're the only piece which is not strong enough, the overall strength and quality of the puzzle will be compromised. And uh, to be honest, I try to go on stage when playing in an orchestra. I'm more nervous before, still, just because in good orchestras everyone plays so well, and nowadays everybody's so solid. You're surrounded by people who, when they have a bad day, maybe they are not so focused, they play one wrong note, or one slur doesn't work so well, but they never have a catastrophic failure in terms of sound production. And we play instruments where sometimes if you have a bad day, either you have no high register or you have no pianissimo, or too many notes are missing. So I guess both the preparation and the mindset to go on stage changes a little bit in the direction of um, trying to be as solid as possible, and before trying to make a difference in terms of individual creativity or artistry.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And talking about mindset, I would like to maybe do a little jump now. You have this wonderful chamber music ensemble, which is Italian Wonder Brass. Are you still performing with them? It was a question from our community.
Yeah, since the pandemic, we have not gotten together, but not because we decided not to play together anymore, but because there were a number of babies
Oh, okay.
came up in the group. So already it was quite a challenge to find free weeks and periods with the 5 people sitting in 5 different orchestras, or 4 at least. And then with the kids, it got even more challenging. So we're not done yet, but we have no current plans as to when we will resume activity. Could be in a few years, but I guess we all have the dream of getting active again, because it's just an incredible add-on to, like, everybody who does chamber music. I think everybody needs that, and again, that's a huge school for so many things. If you want to use it as a school, it's so helpful from so many aspects.
It's a beautiful reason to pause. The actual thing I wanted to get into now is that you also did many audio and also video recordings with this ensemble.
Mhm.
And since COVID, actually the first round for most competitions and also auditions is sending a recording. And we always get this question by students: how do I deal with that? Because I get into the session thinking I have to be so perfect, and then my focus like narrows and everything gets so tight, and then I record the thing like 50 times and it doesn't get better. How many times should I try? Blah blah blah. So many questions. What's your, again, maybe mindset to get into a studio session?
Well, the first mindset is that you're being judged by musicians who are very experienced, mostly, and whose top priority are things that actually matter in the real world as well, such as
Mm.
intonation, such as phrasing, such as tempo, such as rhythmic stability, such as style. And speaking of style, I think it should not be forgotten that you need to really, really, really be familiar with the repertoire that uh, is not only on the list, but the main repertoire the orchestras play. Of course, it's overwhelmingly a lot, but people who have the experience have played several times a different piece under several different conductors, and certain things go without saying, but you cannot write them down. And I think as a young person, when you're in your studies, critically listening to several different versions of same pieces and knowing the repertoire in general will make it easier for you to guess what's the bandwidth between different choices you could potentially make, which would seem acceptable to who listens to you. um, of course, sometimes people are radical in orchestras, and they only tolerate something which is similar to them. But sometimes in other places, people are open-minded and they say, I don't like it, but it's compatible with the reality. And I think that's the number one approach you should take, because you don't know exactly what people will like and what they won't like. And as to the performance in the recording studio itself, uh, I think one should prepare the same way as for a live first round, meaning you should do more run-throughs before you even go into the recording session, and pretend you're doing a run-through of an actual audition, and do less takes and keep going if something goes wrong, because with most people something goes wrong. When recording is such an artificial thing and it's completely unnatural. We all know that most first rounds in professional orchestras are imperfect. There is always some little imperfection, and very often people who make it to the second round are not the few who played technically flawless, but they are those who kind of say something, and often it's just a performance which is interesting in terms of phrasing, in terms of personality, in terms of sound, and often it's not something which pleases everyone. It's not what my father used to call musical McDonald's, you know.
That's
It's
true.
not too hot, not too cold, not too soft, not too hard, not too spicy, not too, and in the end you end up doing nothing because you're
Yeah.
afraid that it could not please somebody. And I think
Mm.
the top priority is staying true to what you believe the repertoire should sound like. Make long takes, if possible, the full run through, maybe once or twice, and then use it. If you make 30 takes, as you were mentioning, waiting for the clean one, especially on a trumpet, the more tired you get, the more unlikely it will be that you will make a take which is both clean and musically interesting. So
Yeah. And you are also a jury member, also at your own competitions. What aspects do you actually pay most attention to? I mean, we talked about style. We talked about, of course, convincing musicality. Is there something else that is like really crucial if you listen or if you watch a recording of somebody who is in a competition?
a few of the aspects which are very important to me, I'm extremely sensitive on intonation, just
Mm.
because uh, a lot of weight has been put on that since I learned music. Since home, I started on violin, So, and I started singing. We were singing when we were little. Just my mom has a piano diploma, simple piano diploma, so she would accompany little children's songs with my brother and me singing, sometimes in one voice, sometimes two voice songs. But already intonating and intonation was a big topic. Next, my father is also extremely sensitive for intonation, just because he has this scientific approach of saying nothing is impossible, really, even on a trumpet, which is sometimes very imperfect in terms of instrument. But anything which is theoretically possible to achieve ideal intonation, which is, I guess, the intonation of how we, I guess, all hear, but some cannot vocalize with this intonation. But we all hear if something is in tune or out of tune, if we are given the comparison, and trying to get as close as possible to that. And this is something I just uh, see is the case in top orchestras. The level of intonation under any circumstance. Sometimes you have hot, warm halls, cold concert halls, and always the intonation is amazing. So that should be a top priority, because you don't want to have somebody sitting next to you who doesn't correct something which isn't in tune. And the other thing is, generally, I really care about shaping. So I want people to get busy with the small resolution phrasing and shaping of notes. If you always start notes with a hard attack, no matter what the musical context is, I have a problem with that. I have a problem with notes finishing abruptly if they are not meant to do so. And you wouldn't believe how often that still happens in the brass world. People are just not concerned with that. People are only concerned with not missing the note, stability of sound, and resonance and projection. But for example, you don't need projection when you play on your own in a studio. It's the last thing you need. Maybe we can address that topic later.
Yes.
But I try to listen to trumpet players with the same ears I listen to for other instrumentalists, which are considered artists and musicians. So I'm not only looking for a great athlete. Of course, we have some aspects which are about nailing stuff and playing clean and solid, but that's not all.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you advise your students to deal with competition, or how did you deal with that? Did you listen to many other trumpet players during your studies? Did you compare yourself to them, or do you think that's an unhealthy way to learn?
Everybody is different. Some people need comparison to find the fuel of competition, in a sense of, I want to be better than you because I know you and I know how I can be better than you. And some people, and I'm one of them, just do their own thing. Of course, I learned from plenty trumpet players by listening to recordings. For me, commercial recordings are extremely interesting because one assumes that the artist playing on a commercial recording is playing at their best. They would not release the recording if it didn't represent them. You have many attempts, but that doesn't fix musicianship. It can fix mistakes, but if you release a recording, you are more or less happy with it. Of course, maybe you listen to it after 10 years and you think, oh, I could have done this and that, or who was that? I don't even recognize myself. But in the moment you release it, you must be happy with it. So you can assume that those are people playing at their best in that very moment. And of course, I listen to a lot of orchestra recordings, and there you always have your instrument group being featured, and you listen to how they play. And it's not so much about following or not following, it's knowing about what I was previously mentioning, knowing what the bandwidth is between different options of choices you can make. And of course, yes, I do have some heavy influence from some trumpet players, but I never felt I was in a direct competition with them. And nowadays, the temptation is bigger because of social media, and everybody's posting stuff, and you don't even know what's real and what's not real anymore. But I would advise people to not forget to think about what they want to say, and to say it in the most uncompromised and convinced and convincing way possible. I think it's the best teacher is recording yourself if you don't have great feedback on a daily basis. Of course, recording yourself and asking yourself whether you are actually producing what you think you are producing. And if you have the luck of being in a good university which has a good class, the daily comparison with your classmates, in an ideal world, it would be a healthy comparison, not even a competition, but that can really make interesting things happen. But we all know that from the moment you try to copy someone, you will be a bad copy, because no copy is ever better than the original. In the best case, it's different, but
Yeah.
it's never going to be better. So if you try to imitate someone, I also realized that sometimes few things I did on my commercial recordings are being emulated and try to copy it, but it can never be as authentic as the original. And I'm not saying the original was right. I'm only saying that the original is the original, and if you want to do the same thing, do it differently.
Yeah. You also mention on your website many people who influenced you, and I was very pleased to read the name of Hans Gansch there, because he's
Yes.
also a teacher at our academy. And I'm curious, what is maybe the one lesson you took away from Hans by listening, or by did you do master classes with him as well?
I
Or
took lesson from him
yeah.
in Salzburg.
So what did you take away from him? What was your maybe major learning from him?
It's difficult to say one good things because there are so many.
Yeah.
But first of all, listening to him from close up and to the quality of his sound, to the beauty of his sound mix from 1 meter away, is something which is worth many books and many lessons. You cannot make up for that. So the mere fact of standing next to somebody like him and listening to him doing that is already the biggest lesson. And I remember he really kicked my butt on this offstage call of the Leonorensignal,
Hmm.
of the Leonore overture, both the second and the third. There is this short offstage fanfare, which is a little bit how would you call it, an obsession for orchestral auditions, just because
Yeah.
it represents the old school trumpet, and you want to represent the old school trumpet, just medieval WhatsApp used to send signals from point A to point B on a long distance, and making it arrive clear. But that's very interesting because it's a great school of articulation when you are at a distance, which actually happens, because when you play behind the stage, when you play both at the opera or symphony orchestra, when you have some off-stage solos, which trumpets sometimes have, clarity of what arrives in the hall is very crucial. If you don't articulate the right way, it won't arrive with all the information needed. And how much he was insisting on how the first note should start from 0 to 100, no fade in, zero fade in. I think we worked 1.5 hours just on the first note, and it had to be loud. It had to be very, very, very loud. And well, I'm. You can tell me better, but I think in Vienna that was that was a requirement to that the Leonore signal would be very, very loud and very solid and extremely uniform. Extremely even, and no note should be less full than the previous one. But that's actually extremely difficult to achieve. And again, this one lesson meant a lot to me, to not just uh, play the notes, but play all of them at the maximum possible level. And sometimes you just think, okay, I played clean, great, fantastic, check.
Mm.
But that's only the beginning, and then you go to a deeper layer and you look at the shape of notes and whether they're all perfectly solid, whether the thirds are not too low, not too high, and so on. So yeah, it becomes a whole different challenge. And for that, I really learned a lot
Yeah, and
from
also
Hans.
knowing what role you're playing there in the piece, so that you know that this is just the, as you said, the WhatsApp signal. Um, makes a lot of difference to not try to make something out of it that it's maybe not. So do you teach a lot of those things also to your students? Like, do you send them to the opera to listen to those things?
Look, my teaching consists of mainly the two extremes of the pyramid, uh, of making sure their fundamentals are good enough so they can access the widest possible repertoire. Um, I think in wind instruments, it's very extreme sometimes. If you don't have command and self confidence about a given fundamental, it's very difficult to even start reading some pieces because the ingredients are just not available yet. And the other extreme being context, as you say. For me, it's extremely important to know how your bit of work will embed into the final result. And for that, definitely, yes, you need to listen to music as much as possible live. In Bern, where I teach, we do have a symphony orchestra. They also play opera, so they do both, but the overall offer on concerts is relatively limited. So people would sometimes go to Zurich, to Geneva, to Basel. Switzerland has a number of quite good orchestras. But yeah, maybe you have to travel. And in the meantime, if in your daily life you cannot do, I most often simply tell them reserve a soundproof cabin, such as this one, for yourself for 2 hours and just listen to a symphony. Just get rid of your phone, put it on silent, take 2 hours and listen to a symphony. If you have the score, even better, but just listen to the full symphony from A to Z, like if you were in a concert. That's a good starting point. You have so many amazing recordings which are there and nobody listens to them because people practice their technique, and you sometimes forget that it's extremely important to know how the final result is supposed to be like. For imagination, that's much more helpful than also when you practice your technique. It's much more goal oriented than if you just do it for the sake of doing it.
Yeah. Hmm. Very important point. And
Oh, right. I should also listen to more symphonies.
pardon? You
I
should
should
also
also
listen
listen
to
to
more.
more symphony.
You can always listen to more symphonies, but I absolutely agree that it's also so important to know what's happening before your entrance and after your entrance, to know what comes maybe in the fourth movement of this thing that I'm always playing for the auditions, where the place is actually in the first movement. So yeah, it's great to hear.
I mean,
Um,
I
yeah,
think I should say one little extra thing because you just
yeah,
triggered a thought in me, and I really thank you
please.
for it. Uh, Probably talking about real auditions, this ability of entering an imaginary bubble in which you hear the some bars before what you're supposed to play and some bars after you're done playing is, I think, the single best advice for playing an audition well, because it's like a Michelin star restaurant where you get very little portions in 20 courses, but each little portion represents a universe of uh, cooking technique or an ingredient or an idea or a concept or a heritage and so on. So inside each little course, you have a world of unwritten information you should be aware of. And therefore, what you were saying, that knowing the context, especially surrounding your intervention, your solo, is absolutely crucial also for when you can literally enter and exit imaginary uh, virtual reality goggles where you're sitting inside Beethoven 5, then you take it off, you enter Mahler 7, you take it off, you enter Carmen, and so on.
That's a great
That's
picture. Yeah,
Now we
thank
have
you.
them, so you
Yeah,
can even you can imagine
absolutely.
you just have a series of VR goggles and you're just sitting in a performance of a given piece, and just take them off and wear the next ones. And that's very important, and it cannot be done if you haven't witnessed that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm. So
Great.
thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah, thank you for this great picture. I think this is a great way of thinking about it when you're standing in the audition, because the biggest problem about auditions, what I hear from students and also from my experience, of course, is that you feel just so alone. But if you like imagine yourself in this bubble, as you said, it's a great way of dealing with the situation. My
Mhm.
God, there's so many things I would love to talk about with you. Maybe just one more
Great.
thing that we already touched on is that actually you studied with your father, and I also have the experience because my parents are both flutists. So how did that go? So how did you like distinguish the role of father from the role of teacher? Tell me a bit about it.
Look, I think my father was a fantastic teacher and a fantastic father, and he still is.
Mm.
But I was not a fantastic student and a fantastic son at all times.
Okay.
But I have the excuse of puberty, so we all have that, and yeah, we're sometimes very immature. So I think if things were difficult at moments, it was mainly because of me, and I am I'm often very stubborn. I don't like that people show me the world. I want to explore it myself and discover things myself. I don't like being given the solution. I want to, even if it takes 10 times longer, but I want to find it myself, because once I find it, it's mine. And
Mm.
I can relate to it, and I have solved the quiz. And I think in terms of using it for what you need, it's much stronger than if somebody else has injected it externally into you. So this I still use also in the teaching very often. I'm not always a fan of giving the solution. I'm a fan of trying to create the environment where the solution can be found, saying, go find your truffles in a forest of this and that type of tree, but I'm not going to tell you the truffle is there. You have to find it yourself. But creating the environment where it's more likely that you find a solution can probably make it last more and be stronger. And one thing I didn't like about my father as a teacher is that he comes from a generation where the focus was on mistakes.
Mhm.
So be careful, in that excerpt, you have that passage which you could fuck up. Sorry.
Yeah.
And by the mere fact of knowing I could mess it up, I would probably mess it up because I was already tense before it even happened. And in my generation, I think in our generation, we focus more on what could go well than what could go wrong, knowing that playing perfect is often happens by mistake, and it often happens when you're not busy trying to play perfect. You know that mental training, of course, is nowadays much more common and much more accepted, and that in sports it's already completely daily bred to focus on what could go well and how I can achieve non-mistakes, and taking for granted that mistakes will be a part of the game. So this brings to much more brave approach of playing, of music making, also taking more risks, taking risks at all, and probably living a better life altogether. So I never very much liked to be warned of things that could go wrong, because I realized that they would make me very nervous when it came to performing those in concert. So that's probably the only thing I didn't like in the pedagogy. But I understand that it's definitely a generational thing. I think it's a generational thing. And I was very resistant sometimes to the thing I hated the most when I was practicing is that at home I didn't have privacy. And sometimes when you're practicing something and it's obviously not ready yet, and you're just trying out something, and somebody knocks on the door and comes in and say, "Hey, why are you doing this thing? It
Oh
should be
no.
done like this and like that." That sometimes would make me furious, and I would just send my father to hell, and he would walk out, and we would have a bad evening, just because I was just trying out stuff. It wasn't my actual intention. And so that brought several several moments of fights. But I admire his perseverance, and he has and had this ambition, which he tried to put on me, not necessarily to succeed, but to do things in an absolutely best possible way. So the perfectionism and trying to really do make as much of your potential as you could possibly do. Probably I was much lazy. I mean, I am lazy by nature. I just feel my agenda, so I let my agenda force me to be hyperactive. But I'm often lazy, and if I don't want to play, I don't play. But he pushed me a lot to juice my talent when it was the moment to do that. And looking back, I think nothing of what I have now would be without him. And that's about my dad. My mom is a super creative person who is a kid. She's not afraid of letting the child which is in her come to the surface very often. For her, it's just magic. It's just saying something. Doesn't matter how the technical execution is. Just say something and be interesting and be alive. But she doesn't have this clinical perfectionism that my father has when he teaches. And once again, it's not about being technically perfect, but it's especially about being stylistically, musically, rhythmically, or in whatever aspect you can have perfect. And as a consequence, often it's also technically very perfect. But it's not about perfection. It's about I don't know how to say this in English. Consciousness, or no, not consciousness. You can help me maybe. Gewissenhaft.
Oh. Hmm. Yeah, with the best consciousness in mind. I don't know. Yeah. Very.
Just
Yeah.
when you think you're doing your best, you're probably not doing your best yet, because there is always something you can improve even more.
Yeah.
And if you get obsessed about finding what you can still improve at some point, probably it's already quite good. And also, speaking about competition, which we did earlier, if you don't give up on trying to find something you can do even better, at some point, probably you're a few steps ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. And that also leads me to my last question before we dive into the community questions. Is there a vision left for you? Because you reached it all. You were in some of the biggest orchestras in Europe. You have the teaching position, chamber music, blah, blah, blah. You have it all. So what's your vision for the future? Is there still a place where you want to grow as a musician?
There are a few personal visions, of course, but that may sound very egotistical, because it's not the top priority. Maybe if I find the time, motivation, if I'm in shape, I would like to maybe record another few things. If my stamina still allow it. I'm now 40, and the athletic aspects of trumpet playing are not unlimited. So I will see if that's still enough in shape to produce good music. I would like to record a few more things. And my very secret and hidden dream, which is not secret and hidden anymore because I'm telling it to you, but
Tell me.
is to do some conducting, because
Oh,
uh, I'm sure I would not be the best conductor in the world, but I'm pretty sure I could conduct much better than people who have a very good career already. just
yeah.
because just because I think one of the things I'm noticing now in conductors is that they have very little knowledge about what musicians sitting in front of them would love, would need, and what the needs are of an orchestra, because they've never sat in an orchestra. Many of them have never played in an orchestra.
Yeah.
For example, I hear conductors speaking with other conductors, and I realize we are living on two parallel worlds. They speak about tempi and about how many minutes your first movement of that given symphony lasts, and people in the orchestra would like an upbeat, or they would like
Yes, please.
they, they would like to have sometimes very simple and pragmatic things which help you not have a collision between their timing and your timing. Or they would like to see a friendly face when they try to make you play softer, or they would like to be pushed when they have the third service on their day and be motivated and made fly, and not just something correct or good looking very often. Conductors must film themselves because that's their only teacher they have. But sometimes they forgot that the camera is not the top priority. Sometimes it can be ugly. Sometimes you can make ugly faces to try to be expressive. And sometimes it's just very superficial. So you don't. We just played on tour with. It was my first time with Klaus Mäkelä, and I must say, he's not overrated. He is probably one of the very few nowadays which can keep up with the top league of the previous generations. And yeah, it's also about not being afraid of being themselves. And sometimes they think they have to do certain things because somebody told them, but it's very rarely an orchestral musician who told them. I remember getting really mad at Lahav Shani once because we were playing Petrushka, and he started the danse russe. Trumpet has to start on a high note, but we need and he just started like, go. And I completely missed my first note, and I was so mad at him. And I went behind the stage after, and I know he's very open to these kind of things. And I really told him, man, Lahav, sorry, but the danse russe, give me an upbeat next time, because you cannot conduct this like this. There is no way I can breathe and I can have. He said, oh, okay, yeah, really, sure. But it was the last concert of the series, so.
Oh no.
So 6 months later, he came back and they said, okay, yeah, we're going to play Petrushka again, same Besetzung as last time. And he came in the rehearsal and finished the introduction, and then da-da-da.
Oh, thank you.
he looked at me like he gave me the most beautiful upbeat 6 months after, and he looked at me and saying, is it okay like this? And I just went like,
yeah, thank you. Yeah, we need more breathing conductors. I absolutely agree with you.
Or at least open for feedback.
Yeah.
Because if you're a pianist, of course, well, you should breathe too, but I understand if you don't realize that your hands must breathe and your hands must sing. And that's not always the case. Sometimes you see people who are extremely expressive and singing and vocal in their instrumental performance conduct very squared, and it's so strange to see that it doesn't match. So yeah, that I'm done talking about conductors.
So you're gonna become one, and then we will talk about that.
No, look, great. I think I read a book which speaks about. I'm sure there are many books like this, but I've just read one which is called The Big Leap, like a leap of a frog, no? The big leap, and it basically talks about the 4 zones of incompetence, competence, excellence, and genius. And it's basically saying probably if you're having a successful career, you're mostly working with your zone of excellence, because that's what you've learned, what you've been trained for. And for example, my zone of incompetence is ironing. It's something which I'm pretty sure I do really bad. I'm not going to improve. I just not have any talent for it. We all have those zone of incompetence on many things. Then my zone of competence, I could say it's cooking. I cook really well. I love cooking. Maybe languages. I love languages, but I don't think I will ever become. That will ever turn into my profession, because I don't do it as well as my zone of excellence, which is what I actually do as a job. And then is the zone of genius, which is something you may have, which you would may be more unique and more talented in doing that, what is your actual profession, but you've never dared doing it. And basically that book is all about checking whether there is something you could do even better than what you're currently living off and doing in your life. And I think my zone of genius is motivating people and helping people reach their goals. I think I'm very talented at, making people believe things before they believe in it, and I believe in it. But I'm pretty good at acting when I teach. So sometimes I like to make people believe they can achieve something before I even know whether it's actually possible or not. And it's a positive tricking, but I am very
Yeah.
passionate about the psychological side of helping people achieve their goal. So this I don't do in the orchestra. I mean, all we do in the orchestra as a principle, in the best case, is trying to create the environment on a mid-term or long-term. It cannot be done in a short term, but try to create the environment in your section and around you for your colleagues to become more comfortable and play better, thanks to how you treat them. Creating an environment. And this is very fascinating. But of course, they are not your students; they are your colleagues, and I try very hard every day to cultivate communication, cultivate healthy feedback, so that we are no longer nobody's defensive anymore and feels attacked when you ask something from them which might be beyond their comfort zone. But of course, that's something I think I care a lot very much. And that said, my top goal is finding a way to democratize music education. Right now, you live in one of the world's capitals of classical music. I live in one of the countries where support for classical music is at its highest worldwide. There are not many countries which invest more money in culture, in classical music, and in education on a national level, in all sorts of education and research. Switzerland invests a ton of money in brains because we don't have any natural resources. And we are two very, very tiny dots on planet Earth, and we are extremely privileged. And as you know, many people don't even realize that, and they complain on a daily basis about very futile things. But I realized that this luck it's kind of it's unfair that not everybody has access to that. And I know Latin America very well. My wife is Colombian, and I've traveled to that continent a lot. I know Asia very well, where the possibilities are there, but maybe the cultural heritage isn't there. You know it very well too. We all go
Yeah.
on tours. And you see so much potential there, and so many people who would be hungry to learn, but they don't have access to what we have behind closed doors, just for a small number of lucky students who don't even realize that they are so lucky, just because they made the entrance exam at Universität der Künste or whatever. And sometimes it's frustrating that you're investing so much energy to try to help a few people, when it would be amazing to at least open up and make things accessible, such as other universities for other fields. Imagine finance, economy, finance. You have British universities where you can take all the degrees online. You can take all the classes online. You can listen to lectures online. Everything is completely open. And in music, that's not the standard yet. So I'm thinking about how to, try to improve that.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's a big vision. Beautiful.
But
It's also, like you
no,
said
even
before
if
with your
I,
father, it's like a generational thing, also a bit. So I think we're going, as teachers, we're going from being the train, the one that trains the student, to actually coaching them, to actually building them up, and finding their own voice, and to bring that to the world is a beautiful vision.
yeah,
So
not forget.
yeah,
I think it's important not to forget how lucky we are that we decide to invest our time in an art which is already crazy. I mean, other people build houses, or they go to offices, or they drive trams, and we are busy the entire day with art, and with the most abstract of arts, which is music. And it's sometimes astonishing to see how much people forget to appreciate the beauty of our domain,
yeah,
of what we do. very often in orchestras, you see people, they only talk about collective contract, and they talk about breaks, the duration of breaks between services, or about temperature on stage. And you completely forget that what we are working with is probably one of the most beautiful things you can do in your life. So
Absolutely.
it's important to remind people of that.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
yeah. And those who
Very
have never
important.
known it, I mean, if you hop on an Uber in Vienna now and you ask them, hey, what building is that? Probably they will not know that inside there is a concert hall.
Yeah.
Too many
Yeah.
people have just never gotten access to that.
Mm.
And I'm
Absolutely.
sorry, but I don't blame them, but I'm sorry that they never saw this beauty.
Yes.
So I think this should be possible to fix now with the internet and with everything. It's should be not too difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we can get together and brainstorm on that because
Yes,
I have some
definitely.
ideas too. But now we have to dive into our community
Do it.
questions because we have so many.
Right.
Maybe we can try to keep that quite short because there's really, we will see how many we can do. So the first one is actually really for the trumpet players. What does your daily practice actually look like?
My daily practice is very unstructured, extremely unstructured, for the simple reason that over the years and with the demands of the job or jobs I have learned that probably my most important tool is listening to what my body needs. And sometimes it tells me, take it easy today. I'm tired of the concert yesterday night, or you've practiced something very physical yesterday night. The lips are tired. Please give me a light workout. Please just find some vibration, find the core of your sound in the middle register, and then leave me alone for the rest of the day. I will recover. Now, uh, 20 years after I started my first orchestral job, my recovery is of course much slower. I've already mentioned the athletic side of a trumpet player. So listening to how my body is doing, how my system feels. Of course, if I say body, I mean the embouchure, mainly because the abdominal muscles are usually quite strong, and they also need some training, but that actually is less has less ups and downs than the embouchure. So I tell you, very unstructured, because I try to guess every day what I need, and I do base. I very much believe in warming up. Um, I find it important to have a daily routine, which we call warm up, but it's more um, re-establishing certain standards every day, because everything else is based on that. So playing very slow, simple exercises as the first thing in the morning, but trying to achieve a very high quality, reducing them to the absolute most primitive thing you can do, not even with a tongue articulation, just air and vibration, and extremely stable sound, very clean slurs between harmonics, or very clean note changes in very slow music, allows me to quickly address fluctuations in daily shape, and try to find sound quality which what I would like to carry along my day, and refer to as a standard which has been created by by myself in the very first notes on that day. Sometimes it happens if in the afternoon. It doesn't have to happen in the morning. But I use this little grounding trumpet grounding session to prove myself that if it's just very simple material, I can play it on a very high quality, and usually it doesn't suffer daily fluctuations as much more complex things which we do after. That's basically what I believe in, and I believe in never forgetting that my modern trumpet is a natural trumpet. Probably what I use the most in my pedagogy is to realize that, yeah, we play a modern trumpet which are 7 tube lengths in one, which we achieve by extending the tubing, such as the trombone does with the slide. We do it with the pistons or with the rotary valves, and each of these 7 series should be addressed separately, at least for a little moment every day, and to play this modern natural trumpet at a very high quality, only playing on a limited set of notes. But the resistance for each tube length is different, and the input in terms of air it needs is very different. And so I like to separate them and then come back to chromatic instrument at a later point, because so I made sure that all the notes I have on each of the 7 harmonic series can exist. And that gives me a lot of self-confidence, because I know I can play the trumpet. Maybe I know I cannot nail a difficult passage, but I know for sure that I can produce all the notes on my instrument. And believe me, it doesn't go without saying at all on a brass instrument, because sometimes you feel tired, you feel your lips are dry, you feel that you're not centered or something, and you doubt whether you're ever going to make your range today or not. And I know maybe it can be slightly surprising to people who play other instrument families where maybe the focus is a little bit on something else, except for range. But on brass instruments, it is, unless you are one of very few natural talents who don't even know how they do it, but who just own it. But I'm not, and most
Okay.
people are not. So,
Great. So maybe included into your answer is already the second question now. How do you build resonance and projection in your sound? That's maybe then the same basis.
okay, it's very important to distinguish between resonance and projection. I consider projection to be not a priority on trumpet for 2 reasons, especially in a symphony orchestra, but even more when you play as a soloist. Most of the time, the task of a trumpet player is not to dominate. It's either blending in or even getting out of the way, because, and that's the second point, trumpet is designed to be loud. Since it exists, it's an instrument which is designed by the shape of its bell and the functioning of its sound production, is an instrument which has not been invented to play soft. This is something that came later. So up until 1750, the trumpet was playing in the climaxes, in the most brilliant movements, it was serving as the strong character in a group, or only in the clarino register, in the extreme high register, it could enter the realm of violin, flute, oboe, and dialogue with them, just because the possibilities to produce noise in such a high register were more limited, and the goal of playing in that register was more artistic than uh, artisanal. Let's call it like this. But on modern trumpet, the big challenge is to play in the soft half of the instrument. Most people can play loud. Of course, it's a little bit more difficult to play loud in the very high register. And of course, late Romantic and more recent composers often ask the trumpets to be trumpets and to play high and loud. But that is a very low percentage of what our daily work is. Our daily work is fitting in, playing in tune, which is the biggest challenge on a brass instrument, and not disturbing the balance. I think the best orchestras in the world now have superior balance. No instrument group is dominating by accident. An instrument group will only dominate if requested explicitly by the repertoire we play, by the composer who wants in that moment an instrument group to dominate. But I'm very sorry, dear brass players, but most of us are still playing too loud. And yes, sometimes we need to, but very occasionally. So my priority doesn't go so much about projection. It goes more than anything about roundness of sound. It goes about managing in real time whether you project more or less, depending on how important your material to be, your musical material to be. If you have a line which should be heard because it's a thematic line, or if it's interesting in terms of texture, in terms of detail, to be heard within a very dense orchestration, yes, you need a little bit more directionality, but for the rest, you try to blend in. And so this is about projection. About resonance, resonance is nothing else than trying to achieve the most balanced set of overtones with as little effort as possible. Of course, effort is always needed. It's physical to play a brass instrument, but what we try is to find a mix of high overtones, which will just make the sound less dull and more centered and more stable. So, if the main question is how I work on them, I work on them, as I just said, in the beginning of the day by playing very slow music with extreme stability on each note, surgical stability. I get rid of vibrato, I get rid of everything, and I just try to play a sequence of very, very, very slow notes with the most beautiful sound quality I can have. And usually, if we have the patience to giving the sound the time to be stable, it will also be resonant, because the whole system will find its way into where the sound is most rich and most balanced. We do micro adjustments. We cannot even think. The body will do them by himself if we give it the time. And very often people just play exercises because they think the exercise will make them improve or will help them, but it's not the exercise. Is what you look for when you're playing it, which matters a lot. And for that, more simple and more slow music is just more beneficial. It takes patience, but it can give the bigger return, I believe. Sorry,
No,
I made a I made a mini podcast on just one topic.
I just thought about the next episode with you. We would have to do a second one because there's so many questions left. Maybe we'll dive
Yeah,
into
let's try.
one
Sure.
more. One
Yeah,
more.
as you prefer.
Was there a key moment in your training or career that completely changed your perspective on the mind body artistry thing?
I wanted to ask you this: what do you understand under mind body?
Yeah, to
Just the
include
balance?
the whole human being, the mental strategy, the body work that is included. As you said, it's a very physical thing. So to not only talk about playing the right notes, but to have the whole picture, as you talked about before, becoming this coach, trying to make people achieve their goals. And this has so many layers. It has the physical, it has the mental, and it has the musical. So is there like some key perspective that changed maybe your playing in general?
Well, perspective is is the best word you could have used, because uh, well, I think, as we've already mentioned, very often one shouldn't forget to listen to the final result by either going to concert or listening to good recordings in a focused and concentrated manner inside the room, just you and the recording, and really listening, not as a background or while biking from A to B, but really you, silence, and the music. But whenever you play in an orchestra, you have the privilege of going into the hall to listen to pieces where you're not playing, or go listen to concerts where you're not programmed on. If your coordinated colleague is playing, I very often try to go to listen to the concerts or even rehearsals, and realize how very often from the hall you are much more positively overwhelmed than when you sit on your chair. And uh, very often we give so much importance to our personal role when we sit in the orchestra, because we participate to the final result as one individual within many, that we, I think, too often forget that all that matters is the overall result of the entire team. And when you go in the hall, you listen even to the other colleagues sitting on your chair, you're so positive, because so many things about what everyone does in a professional orchestra is so much more good things than bad things. Of course, yeah, you can criticize style, you can criticize intonation, you can criticize balance, you can criticize team issues, But if somebody makes one little mistake, it's no problem at all. You don't even notice it. But when you sit on your chair and you make a mistake, you think, wow, the world has just collapsed. A disaster has happened. You're disappointed for the rest of your day, and you want to run and go practice, or whatever compensation mechanism you use for when you feel that you've just had a major failure, while from the outside it's no big deal. And I think starting to realize that, especially since I play in an orchestra, has made me relax a little bit more about the importance of my role and focus on the right things, which is what we've already mentioned, especially intonation and balance and articulation, clarity of articulation. And if a note goes wrong, yeah, it's frustrating because we are all much more perfectionists with ourselves than with others. But at the end of the day, it's not so catastrophic. What can be catastrophic is if you play in an inadequate way and you don't notice, and everybody around you notices and nobody dares addressing it, and it's the elephant in the room. That's catastrophic for a symphony orchestra, of course. If one individual sabotages the group effort regularly and nobody talks about it, that's a much bigger issue. And very often those people live a very good life because they don't realize. And the people who play much more sensitive have a
Yeah.
lot of insecurity, and we feel ashamed if we just dare to make a little mistake, but we don't realize that a lot of what we do is extremely high quality. And when you hear it from the outside, you think, wow, amazing, is that the orchestra I'm working in? Oh my god, I'm so lucky.
Yeah, the change of perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah, beautiful.
that's why the word perspective you used was very very
Yeah,
very very, very important. And the other was general, I think, knowing that everybody fails. Yeah, that very often, maybe if somebody from the outside criticizes you for something you've done wrong, it's important to take this information, but not to be miserable about it, just to elaborate it. And yeah, we've already talked about it. You learn much more from failure, so I try to embrace failure and to use it as very useful information to set priorities on what I need to work on, because it's not easy when things go too well. You don't know how to practice to keep them going well.
yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's also difficult.
yeah,
And you know that humans like to sabotage things when they go too well. You have to do something to destroy everything. You have your perfect family, your perfect life, and now you have to go cheat because it's going too
yeah,
well, and you have to destroy it also. Let's try
yes,
to realize when things go well and invest on keeping it as is, which is sometimes better than stability is the biggest luxury, than
yeah,
exciting change is often can go in both directions.
absolutely. Yeah, that's a great last
Sorry, I'm getting
statement.
philosophical.
Yeah, no, I love that.
I need a Zen
So,
mat now.
yeah, thank you so much, Giuliano, for the time you've taken for us today. And there were so many
Great pleasure.
insights for our community. And yeah, maybe we can welcome you back for all the other questions we received and go on talking
Now
about
you
your
see why I
conductor
was speaking
career.
about 5 hours.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's
Thank
my
you,
great
Giuliano.
pleasure, and I would like to not only thank you for having me, but congratulate you for taking the time for this project, because nobody's forcing you to do it. You have a good life, you have everything you need. So the fact you do it, I think, is already very admirable, and the way in which you do it is even better. So please
Thank
keep
you.
going, and please keep focusing on the mental aspect of things and on helping the world make it more normal to talk about everything that has been a taboo in the previous generations, such as fears, such as insecurity, such as doubt, because I think most people nowadays need to know that they are not alone when they don't feel great. And you know that social media is a huge problem for that, because you feel like you're the only one who's sometimes not having a great day, and everybody else just posts success stories and you don't see their failures. So I think you can do a lot on your side to try and normalize that a little bit more and bring some humanity back into, especially something like classical music, which should never become surgical and overly sterile.
Yes,
If you agree.
yes, you helped us achieve that vision today very much to open up also about things that maybe didn't go so well. So this is why it's so precious to have these
And write a book.
conversations. Yeah, who not? Thank you,
Exactly.
Giuliano. Thank
Thank
you
you very
so
much,
much.
Karin. Great pleasure.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.